Okay, welcome back with an amazingly good question. If the Calvine UFO is a military aircraft, why is it in this part of the Highlands of Scotland? What base did it fly out of? Whose is it? I think those questions can be answered here today. But first of all, what do you think? This is my Patreon poll of what people think the Calvine UFO might be. So it's still number one, a reflecting rock, but the military craft is still bubbling under. So as you regular viewers know, I grew up in Campbelltown, right next to Machrihanish, Britain's Area 51. Machrihanish is a 10,000-foot runway north of Northern Ireland with a clear run from Scotland to the United States and back, and with a very large hangar where things can be put out of prying eyes. When I lived there, it was publicly known that Machrihanish was a space shuttle alternative landing strip. Special high-intensity VASIs and PAPIs, which are runway glide slope indicators specially angled for the approach of the space shuttle, could be switched on. Plus NASA-specified searchlights were available at Machrihanish. I went to school with kids whose parents worked at Machrihanish, and the number one thing that all of them said was their parents had full access to the whole of the RAF base, but the hangar was out of bounds with a shoot-to-kill policy. You didn't go anywhere near the big secret hangar. Why? My father was deeply involved with Machrihanish base, but he was also involved with a secret underground facility 5 miles away, the Campbelltown Lock POL NATO fuel dump. It's very unique. Built in the Cold War 1960s, it's an underground fuel storage facility with a deep water jetty that can take rather large tankers. There's multiple tanks underground, but it has 2 secrets, which I'll tell you about today. Locals were led to believe it was a Royal Navy ship refueling base, and we used to see minesweepers regularly pull up for a top-off. But that's not all it did. It had 2 secret roles. Buried in the hillside near Campbelltown were large tanks of fuel for Royal Navy ships, but there was also exotic fuels. On a regular basis, an LPG, liquid petroleum gas tanker, would turn up and pump gas into the hillside. Why? Well, it turns out that there is a special pipeline from the secret underground fuel dump to Machrihanish. Why did they need LPG in bulk? Well, it's the fuel of a pulse jet engine. Its distinctive sound was regularly heard by residents of Campbelltown who didn't know what it was and kept their mouths shut. The aircraft was, of course, refueled inside the secret hangar with the pipeline from the NATO POL depot 5 miles away in Campbelltown. The classic whistle-blowing radar story comes from Prestwick. Prestwick has a radar facility that monitors civil aircraft crossing the Atlantic. And one day, a radar operator based at Prestwick saw this craft take off from Machrihanish, which is not far away from his base, and accelerate up to Mach 7. He thought that was somewhat interesting as it disappeared across the Atlantic back to the United States. So he picked up the phone to Machrihanish and said, "What was that?" And they said, "You didn't see anything." Oh, I got so carried away with secret hangars that I almost forgot to tell you the second secret thing about the NATO POL base. And this hasn't got anything to do with the Calvine UFO, but it's got to do with disclosure. It's about how you aren't told the truth by your government. It turns out that there's only 3 emergency nuclear submarine facilities in the whole of the UK. One on the south coast of England, Faslane, and Campbelltown. Yes, the POL NATO jetty, this is a bit secret, was one of the 3 places that a nuclear submarine with a nuclear accident could pull in and have the facilities to cope with a nuclear incident. The base had boxes of iodine tablets to give to me as a kid growing up in the wee town of Campbelltown next door, and nobody knew about it. It was very secret. Do we really trust that we would be told the truth about a UFO by our government? No. Meanwhile, back to the Calvine UFO. And that leads us neatly to part 2. Why was it flying over Perthshire? Well, that's actually quite easy. I'm a private pilot and I know about military operational areas in the UK, and the Calvine area is low-level flying zone 14. Here it is on a map. It goes from the surface to 24,000 feet. The ideal place to do this. So this Calvine UFO story has been going on, and it's given everybody who's doing research like me an opportunity to go and photograph the wee reflecting rock, look at the rabbit fences, and I checked out a good contact. Do you remember this? It's called Airlander, a giant blimp transport aircraft. Well, a friend of mine called Dean made the film for the Airlander Corporation, and it's a fabulous movie. Go and look at its ups and downs. And Dean got in touch and said, I know a man who's in charge of US secret lighter-than-air aircraft. You might want to speak to him. He lives in New Jersey. So I did. I'm not going to tell you his name, and I'm actually not going to tell you exactly yet what he told me. But he pointed me in a very interesting direction, and it's not what you think. These deeply classified photographs were published in Paris Match magazine, and they seem to show some kind of sea-launched inflatable craft. The reason why they're still classified is because they were taken through a NATO periscope from a submarine, and the graticule lines and the shape and magnification of the periscope is what the secrecy needs to protect. The objects themselves are actually very interesting, and I think possibly have an uncanny resemblance, because of their geometric shapes, to the Calvine object. Well, what are they? Well, they're submarine-launched balloons. Their exact mission, I don't know, but supposedly they had high altitude and high endurance. This is another one, and again, it's rather geometrically diamond-shaped. Could we be onto something? But no, you probably think it's a wee reflecting rock. Well, there's a problem with the rock idea. However much I personally like it, where's the rock? And why did the Ministry of Defense and the Department of Defense in the US take the picture so seriously if they could clearly analyze it and see that it was a wee rock? I think it shows a genuine secret craft, or it's a fake. Both are intriguing, and as yet, the truth is still out there.